Good afternoon, Ian.
How's that windmill on your roof doing, by the way?
I do have solar panels on my roof, but not a windmill, I'm afraid.
And of course, it's fair to say, before the sort of left wing run away with themselves, people like us are not against new forms of energy. That was never ever the case. The contention we have, and I'm sure I speak loosely for you as well on this point, Ross, is the idea that we've got to make ourselves poorer in order to get there is the nonsense of this thing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not against clean energy. I'm all in favour of clean energy.
Of course
We are. But I'm also in favour of energy security and affordable energy. And sadly, the two, they clash with each other. In Ed Miliband's mind, the more windmills we have, the more solar panels we have, the more energy secure we have. But but it's not quite working out that way, is it? A record 16% of our electricity last year was imported via subsea cables. It's not, we're becoming ever more reliant upon imported electricity. We're becoming ever more reliant upon imported gas, a lot of it from the US, in the form of liquefied natural gas imported by ships, just to keep our, our electricity system on when the sun isn't shining, the wind isn't blowing. And this week has been a prime example. On Wednesday, we had very low winds, very high electricity demand because it was very cold, and we very nearly ran out of energy. We were sort of, a bit close to blackouts, narrowly averted by importing more energy from Denmark and so on. This is what we're living on now. We've got this sort of increasingly, unreliable forms of energy that we're trying to rely on. And the story today, our gas reserves now, and the gas we absolutely rely on to fill in the gaps when wind and solar are low, we're down to we have relatively little gas reserves anyway compared to other European countries, and now they're particularly low, and just at a time we're getting this still calm weather when we really need the gas.
Yeah, well, of course, Ed Miliband would say, well, let's just build more windmills.
Well, if you just keep on building more windmills, you run into this problem. When there's no wind, they're not going to generate anything. When there is wind, they're going to generate so much energy that we can't actually feed it into the grid. And what we're doing at the moment is in order to encourage wind farm owners to invest in them, the government's offering what are called constraint payments, which are basically compensation for when they're producing too much energy for the grid to cope. Now, last year, consumers paid collectively £1 billion to compensate wind farmers in this way. This year, it's estimated it will be £1.8 billion. Wow. And the more wind farms we build, the higher that bill is going to become, and the higher, effectively, the price of wind energy.
It's interesting that the Bank of England is talking about net zero policies. I'd imagine this covers a whole range of issues that they are concerned about or they're raising.
Yeah, well, this was a comment by the Bank of England Deputy Governor yesterday, who said, one of the, an underestimated cause of inflation in the past year or so has been the carbon levies that gas power stations have to pay for the sort of right to carbon permits, they're otherwise known as, that they have to buy in order to burn gas. Yeah. And these levies accounted for half the cost of the fuel bought by gas power stations last year. So it's adding significantly to the cost of green energy, and that's not of gas energy, rather gas electricity, and that's not because of the high wholesale prices around the world. That's because of levies which the UK government has chosen to impose on the electricity industry.
Where do you sense this is going to go, Ross? Because are we going to sort of reach a bizarre and rather disturbing crossroads here at some point where Ed Miliband's green, Great British Energy, that doesn't actually own any energy, and all the people that apparently have invested in it, I'm sure with some fairly generous guarantees of return, which is all of our money, of course, there's going to be a point when it's sort of kind of up and running a bit more, where we can tangibly see that things are happening. Might not be working, but they're happening. Are we going to hit these kind of almost, I mean, not just bumps in the road, but these very dangerous, game-changing moments where we can't adequately run our country properly because of either a lack of energy or an unreliable form of energy?
Yeah, well, every time we run up against these net zero targets, they have to be revised, and it's happened with the zero emission vehicle mandate, which has resulted in the closure of the Vauxhall factory in Luton, or certainly contributed to it. And it's going to happen with Ed Miliband's 2030 target for decarbonising electricity, because, it's just going to be so expensive. It's going to be so difficult that, to make the changes to the grid in that time. It's virtually impossible. Everybody's told Ed Miliband this. Everyone in the industry has said, the world simply does not have the construction kit that would allow you to connect up all these wind farms to the UK grid by 2030. We're going to run into a very big crunch in the next few years, and I suspect that the target will have to be relaxed. It will have to be put back perhaps to 2035, which is where the previous government, of course, had that target anyway. And I think Miliband will be rather humiliated.
The sort of interesting thing here, Ross, is that we can say what we like about Ed Miliband and criticise this, and it does seem like an evangelical crusade that he appears certainly to be on at the moment. And many of us scratch our heads, and you've talked about this and written about this a lot. We debate it all the time. But in Ed's world, if he was sitting here now, he would no doubt give us a very fluent and passionate argument as to why you're wrong and he's right, and he would actually believe it. I mean, he's a lot of things. He's not a stupid bloke. So what is it? What's got to Ed? Or was he always like this? And what is it that he knows that we don't know?
Well, you'll have to ask him that. But, go back to the Summers election. I wasn't actually in the manifesto quite, but at the time, Ed Miliband was promising that his energy policy was going to save us 300 quid a year off our bills. Well, if you're over 80, Labour's just removed the £300 a winter fuel payment that was helping with your bills. There is absolutely no conceivable way that, the changes he is making in this trying to reach his 2030 target are going to reduce energy prices by £300 or at all. They're going to add billions of pounds. It's going to require billions of pounds of investment, and that is all going to be passed on to consumers' bills. Of course it is.
Absolutely spot on. Listen, Ross, as ever, thank